Today I'm going to be showing you how to do reverse percentages with a calculator. Okay, last time we did a non-calculator method. I'd say this is a bit easier as long as you are happy to work with multipliers, which you've looked at before. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do in your books is to write all these down, and I want you to pick the correct multiplier for each of them. Now remember, with multipliers you start on 100% and you either add or take away from 100% to find your multiplier, and then you make it into a decimal. So pause the video, have a go at those, and when you're ready, press play. Okay, so for the first one, it's an increase. So we need to do 100 plus 6. 100 plus 6 is 106. 106% is 1.06. And so you would times by 1.06. The second one is a decrease, so take away. 100 take away 8 is 92. 92% as a decimal is 0.92. So you would times by 0.92 to decrease by 8%. Increase this time, so it's adding. 100 plus 13 is 113. As a decimal, that's 1.13. So your multiplier is 1.13 to increase by 13%. Okay, next one is a decrease, so it's take away. 100 take away 20 is 80%, so 0.8 multiplied by 0.8 or 0.80. Then we've got an increase again, so it's add. 100 plus 2.5 is 102.5. As a decimal, be careful here, 1.025, 102.5 divided by 100, 1.025, and again, there's our multiplier. Decrease by 17% is 100 take away 17, which is 83. As a decimal, that's 0.83, so you would multiply by 0.83. Remember, it's add or take away from 100 to get your multiplier, and it should be a decimal. Right, have a go at these questions, write them in your book, use multipliers, so add or take away from 100 like we were just doing, to go straight to your final answer. Use a calculator, so if you haven't got a calculator with you, go and find one. When you're ready and you've done the 4 questions, press play and I'll do them with you. Number 1 then, we've got £16,000 to start with. We're depreciating, that means going down in value, so taking away by 7%. 100 take away 7 is 93. As a decimal, that's 0.93. So 16,000 times 0.93, I'm typing it in now, 16,000 times 0.93 is 14,880. The second one is an increase one, because when you put money in the bank and get interest, your money goes up. So it's 100 plus 2, which is 102. So 2,400 times 1.02. 2,400 times 1.02 is £2,448. Remember, for bank account questions, if it was over lots of years, you could put a power on that as well. So if I put it in for 5 years, you would just put a little number 5 in there, a power of 5 for each of the 5 years. The third one, a house was bought for 165,000. So let's put the original value there. It's increased, so we're adding. 100 plus 8 is 108. As a decimal, that's 1.08. So 165,000 times 1.08 is 178,200. And then the last one then. Last year a company had 8,600 employees, so that's the original amount. It's decreased, so it's gone down by 12. 100 take away 12 is 88, so our multiplier is 0.88. 8,600 times 0.88 is 7,568 employees. So there's nothing in reverse in those questions because I gave you the original amount and asked you to increase it. when we do reverse percentages, what you get is you get the final answer after it's been increased or decreased, but you don't get the original number. That's why it's called reverse percentages. Okay, so questions look more like this. You have the increased or decreased, and what's missing is the starting value. And how do you do that? Well, it's still multipliers, but because you're working backwards, and this is the only time this will ever happen in percentages, you will be doing dividing, because dividing is the opposite of multiplying. So if multiplying is how you make something change to the new value, then dividing is how you get back to the original value. So what you'll need to make a note in your books then, this is really important, that when we use a calculator for reverse percentages, we need to find the correct multiplier that was used to increase or decrease. So you've kind of got to pretend to be the person who did the increasing or decreasing. Once you've got the correct multiplier, you divide by it. Okay, the opposite of multiplying is to divide, so when you're working backwards, you divide. So I've got a couple of questions like that. What you're going to be careful of is that people tend to use the wrong multiplier. Remember now, you've got to get into the mind of the person who did the original changing of the question. So if you look at this first one, make sure this is in your book. Pause the video if you need extra time. In a sale, there is 15% off. A pair of shoes costs £38.25. So that's the sale price. Okay, so this is the new amount. And what we want to know is what did they cost before, so the original amount. So it's definitely a reverse question. Some people have trouble spotting when it's reverse. A reverse question is any time that you're kind of going back in time. So what was it before it increased? What was it before it decreased? What was it last year? What was it last week? Okay. Now, how would that look then? So this is the original amount. This is the missing number. Now then, how did they get, what multiplier did they use to get the new amount of £38.25? So it was a sale and there was 15% off. Did they add to 100 or did they take away from 100? If they were decreasing by 15%, they were taking away 15%. So 100 take away 15 is 85. The multiplier is 0.85. Okay, remember they made the price smaller by taking away from 100. So what we need to do on a calculator is to divide by 0.85, because that would be the opposite of timesing by 0.85. So on your calculators, £38.25 divided by 0.85 should get us back to the original amount, which in this case would be 45. Now what I should point out here is a common mistake. People think that if there was 15% taken off, then you should make it increase by 15%, and so people would wrongly times by 1.15. Now that doesn't work. If you remember back to last lesson, I showed you a question where increasing by 10% and decreasing by 10% were not opposites of each other because it was 10% of two different numbers. So adding on 15% of £38.25 is not the same as taking away 15% of £45, which is what actually happened. So you cannot times by 1.15 and say that the opposite of taking away 15% is to add 50%. It doesn't work. You have to use the same multiplier that was used to decrease, and you divide by that multiplier. That's where a lot of people go wrong. So we still use the 0.85, but instead of multiplying by it, like you would do in a normal question, you divide by it. Let's have a look at another one then. The value of a house has increased by 3%. Now, how do you increase by 3%? You would do 100 plus 3 is 103. So the multiplier in this question is 1.03. The difference is that we know the answer, it's now worth 128,750. So that goes on the right hand side after the equals. And again, what we're missing is the original amount. So something times 1.03 is 128,750. Don't use 0.97. Right? I'm not asking you to take away 3% of this. I want you to do the opposite of what they did when they increased it. So the opposite of timesing by 1.03 is to divide by 1.03. 0.97 doesn't come into it at all. So 128,750 divided by 1.03 is exactly, and these are nice numbers, £125,000. Okay. You've got to use the same multiplier that was used to increase, but divide by it. Let's have a look at another one then. So, is it an increase or is it a decrease question? It says increase. When it's increased, you add or take away from 100. Add. So 100 plus 14 is 114. Our multiplier is 1.14. Now we're not going to multiply by that, that's what somebody else did. We're going to divide by it. So 9,918 is the number of people who lived there after it increased. To work out how many people were there before it increased, we're going to divide by the same thing that they multiplied by. So 9918 divided by 1.14 to undo the increase is 8,700. Okay, remember you can pause the video to give yourself time. Now maybe it would be a good idea on this last one if you have a go before I do. So if you write this one down, this is the last one I'm going to do in the video. Okay, it's only a short video because you already know how to use multipliers, and all I'm really showing you is to divide by a multiplier when you're working backwards. So an iPhone has depreciated by 9% since it was brand new. If it is worth £864.50 now, what was it worth originally? Have a little go yourselves. When you think you've got an answer, press play in the video. So, something times, we're depreciating by 9. Depreciating is taken away. So 100 take away 9 is 91. So something times 0.91 equals £864.50. Remember, the reverse bit is because we know the new amount, but we're missing the original amount. So make sure that the £864.50 goes after the equals, not over here. It didn't cost that to begin with. It cost more than that. This is what it costs after we've depreciated, after we've gone down. So to go backwards then, now remember, we're not doing 1.09. You can't just add on 9%. Okay, you've got to do the opposite of taking away 9%. The opposite of taking away 9% is to divide by 0.91. You've got to use 0.91 because that's what the original multiplier was to make it go down. So you've got to use the same multiplier when you want to go back up. £864.50 then divided by 0.91, and it will get bigger because when you divide by something smaller than 1, your answer gets bigger, is £950. Now you can check it. If you do 950 times 0.91, you will get £864.50. Just to prove to you that you can't use 1.09, look. If we do £864.50 and we make it 9% bigger, so £864.50 times 1.09 comes out as £942.31. I had to do a little bit of rounding. If you put £942.31 there and you make it 9% smaller, so times by 0.91, you don't get £864, you get £857.50. So this can't be right, because when you decrease this green number here by 9%, you don't get £864.50, and it's because you should not be using 1.09. That is not how you reverse a decrease of 9%. A decrease of 9% is 0.91. Normally you would multiply by that. in a reverse question, you divide by it. So you can get rid of this because it's nonsense, but it's what a lot of people do wrong. That's not right. You use the same multiplier that you would normally use for a decreased question, 0.91, and you divide by it when it's a reverse question. And that's all there is to it. You've got to get the right multiplier and you've got to divide by it. If you get the wrong multiplier, I'm afraid it's all going to go terribly wrong. So make sure that you read the question carefully. If it says decrease, you should have 0 point something. If it says increase, you should have 1 point something. Remember, we add and take away from 100. Increasing is adding, decreasing is taking away.